Alright guys, welcome to VALORANT News. Sentinels officially lock up the #1 seed from their group going into the playoffs with a big result against Evil Geniuses. Lots of roasting going down for some of the players either on that team or other teams that are simply not performing right now, but also major risk factors still for the reigning world champions Edward Gaming, who are not, it seems, in an ideal position now going into the World Championship, if they even qualify at all. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. Let's dive right in. Demon 1 is looking for a team. So he was officially released yesterday, we saw, by Leviathan. Now he's looking for another roster. Says he's looking for a team for the upcoming season as a duelist, a controller, or a sentinel. So what do we think about Demon 1? What should he go on? What's his best role? Where can he get picked up as well? Because he's still a big name, right? Like, at the end of the day, World Championship winning MVP on Evil Geniuses a couple of years ago. Nobody is going to say that Demon 1 isn't a notable name. But is he going to get an offer from a Tier 1 team? It's a tough thing to say. What about Tier 2? What are his... I mean, of course he can get a Tier 2 team if he wants to, but the question is, what should he go and play? Because, as he suggests, he can do a number of things. As he did when they won the World Championship, he can run a number of different agents effectively. It's interesting for the Sentinel role, just to say that, you know, in the Americas Tier 1 right now, the strength of depth, or the strength and depth of the Sentinel role is maybe not quite as strong as it is in other regions, and even it is in Tier 2 to some respects. So maybe that's something that Demon 1 could think about there. Obviously, Demon 1 as a duelist is kind of more notable, but, you know, when he was on the Jet and then sometimes on the, you know, the Brimstone, that was pretty memorable times. So we'll see what happens with Demon 1. Of course, there have been various theories around his future. But yesterday, the playoffs got underway in the Chinese region, and these were some very important results indeed. So Tyloo took down All Gamers 2-0, this in the start of the upper quarterfinals, but the other game that was in many respects more notable was this one. Dragon Ranger Gaming took down Edwards in a 2-0 victory. Now, it wasn't the cleanest win you're ever going to see. You can tell that from the scoreboard. Nobody had a very difficult time indeed. But DRG, they get the job done. They win their Lotus 14-12 on their map pick. It goes to a Crowd, and it was a 13-10, and Edward Gaming go down. So whatever Edward have done lately, Simon signing to that Tier 2 team, getting rid of, you know, ZJC, bringing Gianni back in, is just right now not working for them, right? And look, do Edward still find themselves in a solid position to qualify for the World Championship? Yes, they do. But, you know, for the team that was winning the World Championship last year, it has been quite the full collapse. This is the way that the bracket currently looks, and if we hit the refresh on this, we have All Gamers playing FPX right now. And in a couple of hours, we're going to see Edward Gaming versus Trace Esports, and that could be a serious elimination game. This game right now is 12-10 to All Gamers. Looks like they might get the victory there. But it's really interesting in terms of championship points, right? Because in the Chinese region, Edward are at 13, XLG now at 13, Billy at 12, Wolves at 10. So, you know, it could be trouble for Wolves as well, because if Edward don't win, or they don't make the finals right now, then Wolves would need XLG and Billy to make the finals in order that Wolves would also qualify based on championship points. So, look, Edward should be okay, but it's just with these teams in the playoffs, that they're not currently guaranteed the World Championship, and even when, you know, presumably when they do qualify for it, which you'd think they still will, they're definitely not looking like the team that won it roughly 12 months ago. Now, in the Pacific, we had two other results. Of course, the playoffs aren't underway yet in the other regions, but DRX took down Global Esports with a 2-0, 13-10, 13-10, both maps actually. Pretty nice stuff there from DRX. And the other game, which is very interesting, unfortunately for Zeta, is that they 2-1 Boom Esports after it's all said and done, right? So, yeah, it's obviously tough for the Japanese fans. They're going to be rooting for DFM to continue to have a solid run. But Zeta, when their season was over, then they turned it around, right? They lost the Lotus, and then they bounced back, to be fair, on their map pick, 13-9, 13-8. So, commendable from Zeta Division. They get over the line. That region now looks like this. So there's two more games coming up today. Actually, one of them is already underway. And so, yeah, it's RIQ versus Team Secret on that side. And then we've got T1 versus DFM. Unfortunately for Zeta, even though they got to 2-3, they lose the tiebreakers against T1, even if T1 lose. So it just doesn't really matter. Boom Esports are, I think, going to have still a chance to fight for their opportunities in Tier 2 and Ascension because they did well enough in the first stage. But it's not been enough really from either region. And just to quickly dive in on what's going on with our RIQ Team Secret, it's currently 1-1. Sunset is just about to get underway. The first 2 games so far have been pretty compelling. Look at that 12.5 out of RIQ on the Icebox to fight their way back into the series. Let's talk about the Americas, though, because this is where some of the big drama was going on last night with respect to the future of that region. This was a remarkable round here out of Sato. This guy is the truth. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Since bringing in this player, he has been the dividing force of that franchise in terms of dividing the other team's heads, because he's hitting headshots like no tomorrow. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Could have got the 5th as well, but Okonos steals it away from him. But a beautiful round there from Lev. That gets them to tie up the series against Crew. And then in the final map decider, Sato was at it again. This is FNS's perspective, but, you know, as we can see here, Sato just popping pieces. Now, I don't really know what Crew are playing at there, just running in one at a time. You are asking to just get absolutely picked off one by one. But, you know, if you're going to pop a nice little 4K, usually the other team's going to make some sort of a mistake, and that's exactly what happens here. And Sato pops a nice little 4K again, and ends up just closing out a pretty dominant round. So, yeah, fair play to Leviathan. They get the job done, and they take down Crew on what has looked like to be a solid run at the end of the season before. We know that Crew, when the World Championship is on the horizon, tend to be a pretty competitive force, but maybe not quite the case this year. So Lev, they made a couple of changes. Sato, King, Okonos, Common Tex, you know, they've shown up really, and certainly Sato has had his moments. Crew took the game one, but after that, Sato really, you know, made some big individual plays on the Haven, as we know, and then also most certainly on the Ascent to close things out in the end, when he was 21 in 10 on the Yoru as they closed out a dominant 13-4 victory in the end. The other big series though last night was Sentinels playing Evil Geniuses. This was critical in terms of seeding, and also some of the words that Zellsis had to say that we'll get to in a second here. We did wonder, though, what's going to happen with Chamber. Is, you know, who's going to pull it out, right? Is Ye going to bring it to the party again? I will say for Evil Geniuses, some questionable compositions coming into play here in 2025. You know, bringing the Teho in. We'll see their agent compositions and their decisions in a second, but the Americas has struggled as a region, I would say, right? Like, this year for the Americas has not been a strong one from a competitive perspective. We know that G2 and Sen have already qualified for the World Cup or for the World Championship, and they did so quite some time ago. The other regions, as we've seen, they've not even had teams qualify yet because they've not got enough championship points to guarantee it. But Evil Genius is certainly not going anywhere near that on recent evidence, because both, you know, Evil Geniuses just have struggled so much. It's been a challenging season for them, and for Potter as well. Obviously, the team that they've put together has been pretty shambolic this year. Lots of talk about Icy individually and how he's had a really difficult time of it as of late. I do think Sentinels were always going to be just a bit too good. They've been really popping off lately, reaching some top form. And I think it was Kaplan who was relatively clear that he wanted Sentinels not just to win series like this, but frankly to dominate series like this and put their team away without any difficulty. And that's exactly what they managed to do. They 2-0 Evil Geniuses, and this was a quick affair, right? It was 13-8 on their Lotus. They turned up to a Corrode, and it was 13-4. And if we scroll down, Zekken had 25 frags. Icy had 5 frags, and was it the attacking side? He had 1. Yes, he was 1 in 12 on the attacking side, was Icy on the Neon with a 0.03 rating. It's been tough for him lately, and that's not going to change anytime soon. So, look, Ye was on the Chamber. He tried his best. The Lotus comp was definitely an interesting one, right? You know, Ye's on the Clove. We've got the Ye Clove and the Derek Teho. Like, I don't know about that one, Chief. So, yeah, I don't know. Evil Geniuses, they tried, but, like, the team is just not good enough at all. And is it true that they play Furia as one of their final games? Let me just have a quick look at that. Is that the final match of the two? Yeah, Furia play EG next week. That is going to be, you know, an absolute burger bowl at this point, I've got to say. Furia G2, though, happens today. So that's still a very compelling game, given some of the discussions we've had over the last few days. But as you guys can see on the left-hand side, Sentinels have now advanced to 4-0. And Sin's final game is against 2G. And even if they lose to 2G, they have the head-to-head against G2. They have the head-to-head against Cloud9. So Sen will be the #1 seed from that group there. You know, their record is just too strong, and I'm not expecting them to lose to 2G either at this rate. So the #1 seed is real nice in the playoffs. It gives you the bye to the second round, as we know. And there was a few strong words being said after the fact. As Zellsis says, you know, we clinched the first seed. Maybe I bring out the chamber next week, right? Maybe we see that happen. Derek says 0-2. Unfortunately, Derek was a bit unwell, it seems, so he says he had a flu game buff, but it wasn't happening. But yeah, the real question is around just that team from top to bottom, the level that Icy's been playing at and stuff like that. Just wanted to close out, though, with this comment here from Zellsis, because he comes out afterwards in the interview and says, look, yeah, the region's not really in a great spot. It's not necessarily down to players being weak. It's just because the players are pretty inexperienced. They're not delivering as maybe they will do in the future. I think there's a bit of both at play here. Zellsis does clarify and says, like, I love all the players. I'm rooting for everyone, unless when they play Sentinels, obviously. I didn't mean that in a disrespectful way if people took it like that. So I think what Zellsis said was actually pretty fair, to be honest, but I also think it's fair to be kind of critical of the state of the Americas right now compared to the other regions that are far more competitive from the top to the mid pack. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
I think Americas is getting a little weak, but I think it's because a lot of people made roster changes and there's a lot of like inexperienced players coming up for the first time. So it's kind of unfair to call the region weak when I think it's just inexperience.
Jordan, you just said that the new players on the teams are like kind of trash.
You got one trash new player right here.
What?
No, it's just a lot of, you know, it's his first time coming up on the stage. He's looking good. He's looking confident. Just more reps. He's a very talented guy. Very talented guy. I don't want to glaze him in front of him. Very talented guy, very talented player, but, you know, he plays amazing. You're a vet, dude. You're already talented, but you're a vet.
I've only been in the league for a year. I feel like a seasoned vet.
Yeah, you are. CS. You're a CS vet. Yeah. And you, yeah. I feel like